buddy. Hey, Shannon.
Hey.
What up, John?
Hello, Skippy. How are you?
I'm good, man.
Hello, Skippy. Hello, John.
Ward, your emails are getting really good, man, in my humble opinion. The one that forwarded today was really great. It was so concise, clear, but also like kind, reasonable. It's really good.
Agreed.
You what?
Maker's Mark or some kind of it.
You said you wrote it on Maker's Mark? Is that what you said?
No, that's after that.
Oh.
Your volume's down, Ward.
Yeah, it's hard to hear. We didn't catch what you said afterwards, but it was good. It was a lot better than my email to that same person. My response had something to do with a murderer on the Titanic. I thought yours was far more sensible.
Murder on the Titanic. You hear me?
Yeah, you're just real quiet.
Not well.
Well, now.
Kind of the same. You're like muted.
Ward, you might need to go into your audio and video settings at the top toolbar. Sometimes the microphone gets turned down somehow in that settings.
John, I'm sneaking up on 30 days. I got 29 now. My goal was 60, so I'm feeling good. We got to get out there.
Test.
Much better.
Leaving for Utah on Friday.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome, man. Yeah.
Although they're in the same boat as us, they've had no fresh snow since the holidays, and it's not looking like they're getting in.
Really? You'll bring some.
I'll still have a great time.
Yeah.
I'm up over 30 days.
Really? That's awesome.
We got 25 days of lift service, but done All Creek Trail about 3 times and Maroon Creek and the golf course.
Nice.
I go out and hit for 36 holes at a time on the golf course.
Shut up.
I'm over 50. Not just my age, but ski days.
You're at 50 now?
A little over, just because of that 4-day hut trip I did.
You're a better man than I, Gunga Din.
I don't know if I'd go that far, Ward.
Well, you've been on skis more.
There we go.
Oh, shit.
I heard that.
I know. My internet's being weird. It's a word in my vocabulary. What to say? There we go. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, guys.
How are ya?
Doing good, thanks.
Nice.
You got your teddy bears up there. Looks like E.T.'s closet.
It is like E.T.'s closet. We collect a stuffed animal from wherever we travel, and this is where they live.
Rachel, so this has become a tradition for Jamie and I as well. Every time I leave, I end up coming back with a stuffed animal. It just happened accidentally the first 3 times, so we've realized now it has to be a thing. But when she first got the first one, like 2 weeks later, our favorite dog, Jane, who owns Shakti, is like a close friend, and so we dog sit a lot. And I come by, and Baxter has the stuffed animal in the mouth, and I look over to grab it and realize that Jamie has given it to Baxter, and I'm like, listen, I came all the way from Costa Rica with that. What are you doing?
That happens.
Yeah.
Got to keep dogs happy.
All right, okay, Council here. We'll go ahead and get started with our work session.
One more.
Is GrassRoots there and ready to go as well?
Hey, Shirley. Hi, Dan.
All right, I think we're up and live. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight as the City Council for the City of Aspen work session, January 24th, 2022. Tonight's agenda is an update on the City Council childcare capacity goal, as well as a chance for council board reports and council updates. We're going to get right into our work session, but I do want to just say one thing. We've had a lot of conversation over the last month, 6 weeks about childcare and some issues going on, and some negotiations really that are still going on. So I just want to remind council and any public that are viewing that this is an opportunity for us to look at that overall capacity goal and really this as a council priority. So we're going to be looking at this from a policy and high level area, as well as getting into some of those crossover areas. But really our function in our forum tonight is going to be about looking at our overall goal and future planning and how that relates to it. So just that as a note as before we get started. I see Shirley on the line. I see Diane on the line. So I think one of them might want to introduce and then start talking about the memo that we've received.
Well, I'm thinking that's probably me. So thank you, Mayor and council members. I also want to acknowledge, and I can't see everybody, but I did see that a couple of our board members, Sue Way is on the call. Jessica Garrow is on the meeting. Stefan Reveal is going to be here. He actually had to do some things with his kids, so he's going to be a little bit late. And I think we might have a staff person or two also here with us tonight. So thanks for everybody being here. And thank you to Shannon for sharing that screen. Sorry, I'm waiting for mine to come up. I don't know. There we go.
Yeah.
All right, we can do the next one right away, Shannon. So this is just a look back, a little bit of background information from the August resolution, what the childcare capacity goal from City Council is, and the 3 steps, which are pretty straightforward for accomplishing this goal. Planning, designing, repurpose, or build new buildings to add physical capacity to increase available childcare space. Increase recruitment and retention. Oh, my numbering got goofed up. Sorry about that. Of qualified early childhood teachers, and to generate funding to support the development of new childcare spaces. All goes hand in hand, and we've had that discussion for a while now. The memo has more background for your information. It had some of the survey responses from 3 different surveys that were produced, West Village, Basalt, and the City of Aspen. So I know that there's probably more questions. Hopefully we'll answer some of those as we go along. But we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this one addresses the first part of that goal, the planning and design. We're looking at a partial map of Burlingame property, and it's focused on the lot and the 2 RO lots that are right there, the park where the childcare has been designated to go. So there's a lot of things happening that have to do with this. The first thing that I was going to talk about is this design lab. So I applied to be part of a state network that an agency called EPIC, Executives Partnering to Invest in Childcare, put together. They pulled in experts, and that part is in your memo too, where it talks about everything from funding and governance and financial models and workforce, and especially because this is for employers. So I participated in this representing the City of Aspen as an employer who has employees that need childcare. It's a mixed bag. There's about 10 organizations across the state. Many are counties, hospitals, schools, sometimes in partnerships with cities. There's a couple that are strictly businesses that know that they want to do this for their own employee retention. So it's been interesting because I've learned a great deal from the business side of what those folks bring to that conversation. And they are learning a lot more about the childcare business that I'm more familiar with. So it's been interesting. And we have a few more sessions going through February that will wrap that up. And the intention is to make people better prepared to know what they're getting into to start childcare, what the costs really are, what the rules really are. And then also to give people hopefully a leg up to help access some of that funding. So we'll see. It is an interesting landscape out there these days, but there is funding available. And I have been encouraged because there have been more businesses than I thought that are already, they're interested, they're stepping up, and they're wanting to do something across the state. So that's been kind of exciting. So the second part of what's going on under this part of the goal is the progress that we're making at the CMC space, the classroom that we are turning into an infant room to meet the more immediate need. Right now, the renovations are happening inside that room, some flooring, cabinets, plumbing, that sort of thing that needed to be changed in that room. We have continued to talk with two different folks and looking at models that might work to operate this room. It is a bit of a catch because it is extremely difficult to operate just an infant room, stand alone, run it as a business, and even break even. So that might be something that we come back to you at the next work session with an update of what that really is going to look like and how we can. One of the conversations has gone, and this is an area that I don't know as much about, but I would look to other expertise, even some of you, to think of it as an incubator for a way to have somebody that wants to be a director and they're director qualified, but they never have been before, to get some real experience, let them run it, but under an umbrella with somebody else sort of providing a safety net for some period of time. And then being able to launch that person, because not only is it difficult to find qualified staff for a lot of different businesses, it can be really difficult to find a qualified director, and not only qualified, but who wants to be a director, who's willing to do that job. So I think the idea has some merit, and it's something that we will work on some more and bring back to you all. But it is progressing pretty smoothly. I will say that in the memo, I think I wrote winter, that we plan to open this room. And depending on your version of when you think winter ends and spring begins, I would make that a winter/spring, because, you know, if we have winter again to April and May, I'm good. But other than that, I could be off by a little bit.
Shirley, I think we got a question
You bet.
on one of those items. Ward?
Hey, Shirley. Yeah, as I was going through the memo, the packet today, that I just wanted to keep emphasizing that where we're putting kids first and where we're putting city efforts and time and effort towards training, that I would like to leverage those people that are getting trained and to provide services at the upper end of the valley in our area, in our service area, that to be able to train childcare providers is really important. But if we're going to be putting assets into it, I want it to directly benefit. If there are ways that we can incentivize, encourage, or leverage that to service Aspen's workforce.
Yeah, I have that same thought, and I think there are some ways to do that. I don't have a solid answer, especially for a director for a new business. But for example, the intern position at Kids First that we have had funding for since last year, that comes with a bonus when that person receives the level of credentials to be an early childhood teacher, and then they receive another, I believe it's a $500 bonus when they take a job as an early childhood teacher in a program in Pitkin County. So I think it would look a little different for a director and a business to do that, to spin off, but I think we're on the same path.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. And then the Burlingame. So the most updated information I can give you there is that we had RFP go out. We got two bids, but they were both really good bids. So we met, we interviewed, we did the scoring matrix, and Jessica was part of that. Jen Fallon, Asal in finance, several of us. We are working through some of the details. We have a meeting coming up later this week, but we hope to come back to you with a contract to approve for design in February. So that's pretty exciting. And I think I'm excited with the folks that we had apply and that we'll get that contract. They've got some really creative ideas.
Shirley, we got another question for you here. Skippy, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I was actually just following up with Ward. Ward, just so I understand your concern, or is the concern that we spend a year, 2 years training somebody and then they end up using that training by doing childcare in Glenwood? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, childcare in Glenwood is fine, but I really do want our efforts to increase the availability, accessibility of childcare for our workforce in the Aspen area. So, you know, it's nice that people get trained, but Shirley said there's a bonus or an incentive for somebody in Pickens County. Yeah, Skippy, that the answer to that is yes. I want there to be an incentive and a focus on providing training for people that are going to be actually providing childcare in Aspen, in Pickens County, for the workforce in Aspen.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I share that, and I don't know how it works in childcare, if there's some version of a non-compete, but, you know, I think about my contract when I got hired into an industry I knew nothing about. You know, I was going to get trained up on the job and launch a location. And part of that is, you know, for 2 years after you leave, whenever that is, whether it's in 6 months after you receive your training or thereafter, you can't use that skill somewhere else.
Yeah, I think Jim can opine on that, but I don't think that those kind of no competes are very enforceable. But the emphasis and the idea is to provide childcare for our workers.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking that perhaps a little information from Shirley for our viewing public as much as anything. I know there's a lot of information in the packet, but I was just wondering, Shirley, if you have these numbers at your fingertips or anything, how many families are assisted with tuition support through the city of Aspen? And is that limited to just people working jobs within city of limits proper, or do those subsidy supports help people in the greater Pickens County community of workers?
Yeah, good question. So the last part of that is the easiest part to answer. To qualify for the financial aid through Kids First, a family has to live or work in the urban growth boundary. So they might live down Valley, they might live in Snowmass Village, but if they work in that urban growth boundary or live up here, and actually a lot of them do both, they would qualify. Off the top of my head, I can just tell you that, you know, we have an average of 40 to 50 families at any given point throughout the year that get financial aid from us. I don't know exactly what that number is right at the moment, but it's also open to any of the licensed childcare programs in Pickens County. So that's another qualification. And then of course they qualify based on their income for how much they get awarded.
Great. And so that assistance to the childcare facilities, that's kind of a broader grant to just help with their staffing needs and or capital upgrades or things like that. It's not related to how many children work in Aspen or how many work in Picken County or
Right.
anything like that.
Right, it's a whole separate deal. There are different grants and incentives and the infant toddler subsidy. And we can talk more about those too. But the financial aid, it is paid to the child care program, but it's paid on behalf of the family. And then it shows up as a credit on their tuition bill.
Correct.
So
And then
it is
again,
a whole different thing.
and then capital and those sort of larger grants are separate from enrollment numbers per se.
Correct.
And the last question would be, do any of the other municipalities contribute to Kids First for those dollars to be going out for child care subsidy or for capital grants to the providers?
At this point in time,
Not
Snowmass Village does
they may do
not.
it separately, but I'm saying through Kids First.
No, not through Kids First. Basalt does it separately. Snowmass is working with us, but not in my means of contributing funding. No.
Okay. Thank you. Because I was just thinking the urban growth boundary includes all of the airport business center and outside of the city limits. Thank you.
Okay. So the last piece, I guess, just to talk about the Burlingame project is that we've had conversation with finance, with a bunch of different folks actually, and besides the contract, you will also see us coming back to council for a supplemental for the rest of the money that's needed for that contract for the design part of this project. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. Go ahead.
Yeah, Shirley, at some point, I guess, and I'll wait till the end, but I do want to have a longer conversation about planning and design for new child care buildings as it relates also to the school district and the lumber yard as well. But we can do that at the end.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to make myself a note here. So yes. All right. So the second part of the capacity goal, the way we're going to achieve this is the recruitment and retention of early childhood workforce. So there's a couple of slides there. This first one, I'm just giving you an overview. We did a survey out to all of the existing directors and teachers and asked them about their housing. Where did they live? How much did they pay? So this graph that's in front of you is what people answered about how much they pay each month for housing. And even though you see a line over there that says less than 500, that was no one. The red section that says 11.1, that is where we start and we go clockwise. So that's people that pay between 500 and 999, going to the yellow, the green, the purple, you know, up to the folks that are a pretty good chunk, you know, that pay more than 1,500, more than 2,000, and a couple people more than $3,000 a month. The other thing that we learned, well, so let me back up a little bit. I will say we only had 27 responses, and I think that's not a high number for the workforce that we have, but I think this is a really personal question. So I wasn't too surprised that we didn't get a much bigger response. We did get responses. Those folks worked in 8 different childcare programs. 29% of the people who answered the survey live in Aspen, 15% in Picken County, 22% in Basalt, and then much smaller numbers in Eagle County, Carbondale, Glenwood Springs, and beyond.
Shirley?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just got some clarifying questions. I've got Rachel, and then I've got one, unless ours are the same. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hey.
Yeah, they might be. Shirley, I'm wondering, is this what an individual figured was their pro rata share of a housing cost? Or was this an entire family's housing cost, including what both partners might be making if there were 2 partners and the house size they need for their kids? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, you know, if it was 1,500 to 1,900 for a 3-bedroom, I would think that's reasonable. If it's that much for a studio, I would not. So that's where I'm lost.
Well, and that was the hard thing, to be really honest, to get to. So we asked a few different questions, but this was not a pro rata share. This was how much their family, whatever that family looked like, paid for their housing.
Okay.
Most people responded that they had 2, 3, or 4 people living in their households. 40%, it was a family with no young children, but 55% had 1 or 2 children living at home. Some people, 22% had lived in their housing for over 10 years, but many others, the majority of people lived less than 1 or 2 years in their housing. 22% lived in APSHA housing and 78% did not. 63% of the folks that responded rent their home, and 37% own their home. And then one of the final questions we asked was, how do you feel about it? Is it so expensive and you're not sure how you're going to keep doing it? Or is it a pretty good deal and you're happy? So it didn't feel, most people said it wasn't very stable. It was expensive. The housing costs did not balance with the wages paid. 55% said it was costly, but they were doing okay. 15% said it was more than they could afford. They didn't think they could keep making it work, or even were considering changing jobs or leaving the area because of the cost of housing. So a range of folks for sure. And I think that gets to your question a little bit, because there's a big difference if you are a single person or even a single parent, and depending on where you can find and what you pay for rent versus, a 2-income household or even more. So we're just beginning to dig into that. But the question kept coming up about childcare folks can't afford housing, but yet some can, right? I mean, they're here, they're doing something to afford housing. So what is that really, and what is considered affordable?
Thank you, Shirley. Go ahead, Rachel.
Can I follow up really quickly? I find this really interesting. I'm really glad you've done this sort of survey, even if it's just a partial snapshot. It would be interesting to find out a little cross-referencing if of the percentage who own their homes, were they in APSHA or things like that. But when you look at the percentage who own their homes who are not in APSHA, given what's happened to real estate prices, that's like a workforce that's going to go away, when they retire, because their home will now be $1 million home when it's sold to someone else, even if it's in Carbondale. And it's possible that one parent is the major bread earner and the other's the minor bread earner, but you can't count on that for security of your workforce, that we can underpay you because someone else is overpaid or well paid in their profession. But it does point to longer term issues and concerns, I think, and let alone just rising wages. Thank you.
One more here, Shirley. Ward, question on this information?
Yeah, Shirley. I think this would be really useful as a percentage of income. We've got some people are paying more than $4,000 a month for housing, and if you can forward to us the rest of the details that you've been talking about that aren't on this screen, I'd enjoy having that as part of my data set.
I can do that. All I have is what people reported to us, but I think it does, especially I'll have to look at it a little bit more and figure out how to make sense of cross-referencing that, because then I would think we would have some better information. So thanks, Ward.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can go to the next slide. So this is still talking about workforce, but just highlighting a few areas. And I will tell you, first of all, this is a picture that was taken before COVID. So don't don't stress about that. This is downstairs in the yellow brick, but it's not a recent picture, sadly. So one of the things that we did in late 2021 was we started an employee assistance plan, which is one of the benefits that, of course, city staff have. It provides mental health counseling. Sometimes it's financial, legal. There's a lot of different ways that those folks can help. And it seemed like a really good benefit for not a really big cost. So we went ahead and provided that, particularly to the childcare programs that are not part of a bigger system, like the school district or the ski company, for example. They already have that, but the smaller ones didn't. So especially in these really stressful times, to make that available to those staff people, we had several people come back to us and just ecstatic. It's like, I didn't know I could do this. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. So I wanted to pass that along to all of you. We, of course, continue. We are doing quality improvement assessments and coaching with our staff in the programs. We have a few programs coming up in the next couple, well, between now and the fall. They'll be coming up for their Colorado Shines assessments again, their ratings that the state provides. So our coaches are in there helping them. And we're working on a new incentive that really is geared for the workforce. So it takes into account things that, like the retention, their education levels, their participation in trainings and coaching. Individual awards are going to be made. Right now we're calling it the VIP award, because unless one of you have a better name for that, something just to identify that these people really are critical to our workforce and to our economy. And we want to support them. We want them to not only increase their abilities and be the best teachers they can be, but we want them to stick around. And so we're working out the details of just how we're going to capture that and how we're going to award that. But Kids First Advisory Board really is quite excited, I think, about doing something that's really going to help the workforce. Next slide. So one of the other things that was, that I've thought a lot about was how the heck we were going to pay for all of these new things. Not so much the ongoing operations, but Burlingame. You know, it's a big project. It's a big new building. And we're all well aware that we have a reserve fund, but there's not enough in that reserve fund to build that kind of a building. So through the design lab people, actually, I was put in touch with an organization that does strategic planning in a very collaborative way. And I'm working with a SOL right now, working on the contract. I did get another bid, so we did all that, but I'm excited because this is not something that I have a lot of background in, and we've certainly set the stage. We've met with folks, all the other big employers, with folks at APSHA, with ACRA, and we know there's a need. We know that people are interested, but this woman, whose name is Kate, that we've been talking to, intends to convene this group of people, partners, whatever that looks like. She wants to help clarify roles, define a structure for what the leadership group looking forward to this building and others, what that might look like, expectations for how they will participate, develop a strategic vision for the project, identify key messages for engaging the community, outline a project budget, and develop a strategic fund development plan to support the design and launch of the childcare facility. And this was something that, like I said, I really struggled with, but in talking to Diane and Sarah, we had carry forward savings that we could apply towards this contract, and having this person who has so much expertise really help us pull this together and work on the third part of how we're going to achieve this, which is with the funding. So that is in the works. More about that, hopefully in the not too distant future. Her timeline was to start in February when we have an approved contract, and to wrap it up in large part by May, possibly June. So I think I'm excited about that because it goes on a parallel path along with the folks who are working on the design, because you can only get so far with either the funding or the design without the other piece being there. So that was my thought on that. We can do the next slide. One of the other pieces that we talk about with this goal is both policy and advocacy beyond what the city of Aspen is able to do, which is a great deal and a lot more than other communities. But there is a lot going on at the state level, and that also kind of ties into long-range planning, because hopefully those things will have an impact, and they have already, and it will change what we are able to do with our funding and be able to reallocate some of that, I think. So this slide is just a really high-level overview of what the state is using, both the ARP, and I made notes to myself, the American Rescue Plan funding, and then the CRRSA, Coronavirus Relief, Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. So there's more information about all of these, but in a nutshell, for instance, the Childcare Stabilization Grants, those opened up on Friday. All licensed providers across the state got an email, and it's non-competitive, but they have to go in and they have to provide their quality rating level, their number of children that they serve, and there might be one or two other things, but it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much things that licensing already understands. And then they will be notified, and they sign a contract with the state, but that's about it. They get payments every month for 9 months. A large sum of that goes to workforce, and the other goes to families. So this money is intended by the state to either provide more services for families, help reduce their cost, help support workforce in ways that programs might not have been able to without this funding. And as you can see, it is the biggest chunk of funding out of all of this. I see Skippy's hand.
Yep. Question there. Go ahead, Skippy.
Thanks, Shirley. Yeah, so I see that the top line goal is this 5% increase, but in a broad range of children. How do we expect that goal to actually impact us here locally? Like, what will that actually look like?
This funding specifically?
Well, I mean, do we expect to see a 5% increase in capacity as a result of the funding by June 30? Do we expect 2.5%? Are they all infants? Are they all 4-year-olds? Like, what do we think this will actually do locally?
Well, I haven't honestly thought about it in terms of percentage, but yes, I think a 5% increase is reasonable. I would have to do the math. I mean, honestly, it could be even more than that. Right at this moment, we have, for example, 32 infant spaces in licensed childcare. So just by opening the CMC infant room with 8 more spaces, that's what, 20%? Sorry, I don't do that very well. While I can't do math and talk at the same time.
You're doing great.
But you know what?
You were close. You were very close.
Let me work on that a little bit more. And I think that's a fair enough question. And,
yeah, and I don't
down by age, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm not looking to say, is it 4.3%? I just want to know what the real impact is. We think it's going to be 8 more infant spots and 12 more pre-K spots, or, you know, what do we think that this bucket will actually deliver is all I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think from the state's perspective, when we're looking at this funding specifically, they are hoping to not lose any more spaces because across the state, we've seen a big loss. Programs closed, workforce went away, all of that. So you also see on here the employer-based childcare facilities. That is a very competitive grant. Circle grants are also competitive grants to childcare programs. A little bit different, sort of for innovation and expansion. The quality improvement incentive is also paid directly to childcare programs. So if a program, for example, is a level 1 or 2, there's a set amount of dollars, and it's not a huge amount per program, but I want to say $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to help them navigate and to do the work to get them to a higher level, to get them to a level 3, 4, or 5. Because that's the other thing I think we have in common with the state. We want more childcare. We also want that childcare to be high quality. It's got to be both. Licensing incentive is aimed at folks that are particularly home providers that might be doing unlicensed care, exempt care, a whole different range of things in order to go through licensing. So they might need some improvements in their home. They might just need some help. Maybe they need a computer or paperwork or something. So that's an incentive to help those folks. The councils are given this next chunk of money, the outreach to help childcare. So they basically have a navigator who's available for families to help them in real time find infant care and toddler care. So it's helpful, but there has to be care to find in order for that to happen. I see Ward's hand. I'll stop.
Yeah, in my notes, I had the value placed on Shine's level. Like we have some 1s and some 4s, and how do we encourage those 1s to get higher ratings?
Well, clearly, I mean, the state is reaching out and helping people. Our coaches help people do that. And a lot of our programs, you know, Rachel asked about financial aid and the infant toddler grant and some of those things. The infant toddler grant is scaled so that if you are a level 4 program, your award for your infant room is 20% higher than if you're a level 3. And that's 10% higher than if you're a lower level. So we do provide incentives through a lot of the operational funding that we already do. Besides the support, like I said, the coaching and the assessments to help people get there. It's still a lot of work. I won't tell you that it's easy for programs to do because there's a lot to take into account. Staff qualifications, policies, food and nutrition, child safety, family partnerships. There's a lot of moving parts for people to figure out, but we have some programs that have done it very well. So anyway, the rest of these, some of these have not really opened up yet, and we're still kind of waiting to see how those are going to be dispersed, what that's going to mean. The bottom one, I think, has a lot of potential, the CCAP rates. We're really fortunate in Pitkin County because Pitkin County already pays the amount that most of our programs charge. That is not the case across the state. Across the state, they've made a rule that you have to, CCAP parents have to get an award that is equal to 75% of the cost in that area. The thinking being that that means they would have a choice of 75% of the programs, but it doesn't always work out that way. And it kind of shorts the providers because it's not enough money for those that are doing better. It doesn't equal their tuition.
Yep. Rachel?
Thank you. Just really briefly on that last one, the CCAP, for those who aren't familiar with the initials, that's the program that the state passes through to the counties for basically what you might call super low income families or certain special categories of underage mothers or single mothers and things like this. It's a program that the county has to pay to them if they qualify. They're not allowed to drop people from the rolls. The number of children and many times actually exceeds the amount of money the county has gotten, but they've been able to buy unused dollars and trade with other counties and things like that. So the county traditionally has kind of fully funded the qualified pack of people for those. But those are the super low income families. And so when, if they were not able to take care of as many, it really bumps heavily into what Shirley subsidy can do for families who are of higher income. And I'm not sure what the current standard is, but it was always some percentage of poverty level that they could assist families, parents with childcare who were 130 or maybe 170% of poverty level, and they would change it literally every year or so. So that's not money we can access, but it's money that helps support childcare needs for many of our lower income workers. Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel, it was 185% of federal poverty for a long time. A couple of years ago, it went up. They are now at about 250% of federal poverty, which is still low income for a family to live on in Pitkin County. But it has made a difference that the state is paying for that, and it's relieved a little bit of the pressure on our financial aid. You're right.
Yeah, and maybe at some point the federal government will update the federal poverty level so we don't have to do percentages of it. Thank you.
I know. Yeah, it's not a good scale to start with, but it's what they use. So, anything else before we move on?
Well, so Shirley, I'm just wondering, I'm assuming that these, whether they're competitive or not, these grants are for application. How confident are we that our local providers are taking advantage of these opportunities? Do you think some of them need help in pursuing what could be coming their way? Where do we sit with that? Because oftentimes these dollars are out there and people just don't take advantage.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And we've had a lot of those conversations. The folks at the Rocky Mountain Early Childhood Council have passed this information on, the headline when it opened up on Friday. We shared it out with people, and basically I kind of asked for some response back. It's like, let me know if you got in and filled out your application, and do they give you an estimate of how much you're going to get or when you're going to get it? And they do provide an estimate of how much you would qualify for. They have not yet said when that will start actually flowing. But I did hear back from a number of providers that were right on it. I also talked, and it no fault of their own, but the director at the school district contacted me because she wasn't sure that they qualified since they were a school district. And it's like, oh, absolutely. You're a licensed childcare, even though you're run by the school district. Don't let that money sit there. And so she went in. I haven't heard back from her. That was Friday, but yeah, we've absolutely followed up with folks, made them aware, and shared that information across directors.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next slide talks a little bit about next steps. And go ahead, Shannon, you can go to the next one. This is just a reminder for all of us. We are scheduled, back up one, there you go, for another work session in just a little over a month, because things really are kind of moving along. So I think we'll have more to report even then. The city council meeting will have the contract for approval for the design, and April 18th will be another work session. At this point, I was going to wait and see, Sue, if you're on. Stefan, I can't see everybody.
Yeah.
But I will.
They are.
Yeah, I will let my board members sort of take it from here.
Yeah, Shirley, I'm here. This is Stefan.
Thanks, Stefan.
Hi, Steph.
Can you,
Shirley, you wanted their input on these next steps?
I'm here as well.
and support needed from the council? I'm not sure if Stefan could see the slides. Or Sue, are you there?
I am.
Oh, Stefan's back. Stefan, can you see the slides?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is the support that we need from City Council. We obviously continue public support for this goal, ensure continued support for the department who will help develop the process, expedite approvals for building and land use process, and prioritize affordable housing for early childhood workforce. Shirley, do you want me to go on to my comments?
Yeah. Well, Rachel has her hand up. Maybe.
Yeah, we have a quick question there. Rachel?
Oh, I guess it's less of a question than I was going to make a comment when we got to the end of this. I am happy and will do everything I can for 1 through 3. I have a real hard problem with number 4. Way back in the day when I was mayor, we were going to use Kids First funds to buy 8 units at Truscott, and a future council changed that around. If it was done with housing dollars, I can do that. But I can't tell you how many other groups have come to us in the past to say, please prioritize ambulance drivers, please prioritize fire workers, please prioritize hospital workers, please prioritize police people, please prioritize sheriff people, please. And by the time we finish prioritizing everyone who should get a unit first, I guess there would be no need for worker childcare because there wouldn't be any workers left working in our housing program. So I'd like to find ways to support that, but it's a slippery slope. We've all know the issues about it. People can get their housing with one occupation, leave 3 months later, then do they get evicted? Do they not get evicted? It's just not a slope I'm willing to go down, but I'd love to find the types of resources available for the child care fund to be able to pay for some securing of additional housing. And to that end, and I'll leave it at this, I will say, I really believe we need to have greater contributions from the other municipalities to our child care needs. And it's just absolutely wrong that we have an airport business center and restaurants on top of the ski mountains that are not collecting sales tax dollars or contributing to this broader community need. And there's a November 22 ballot. I hope some of those agencies start participating so that we can continue to work as a multi-regional, multi-cooperative agency. But at a certain point, I'm getting more and more questions from people about why don't we just start pulling our resources on all levels, housing, childcare, everything, only back to Aspen businesses and Aspen people. And I don't want to see us going down that route, but prioritizing housing is just somewhere I can't go. We need more revenues into this overall program. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Skippy?
I just wanted to follow up on these questions, and then I'm looking forward to sort of the broader discussion you talked about, Tori. But just so I'm super clear with you, Shirley, and the Kids First Board, as far as my continued support for the goal of prioritizing childcare and increasing capacity, you'll have it. In terms of development of new facility, I think in the last little while, I think about 20% of my council time for the last 3 weeks has been around issues of childcare, probably 20 hours of calls over that period. And then a bunch of meetings on top of it. So it's been actually really great. And it's been a good opportunity for me to get more inside information and just more caught up than I was and probably should have been from the beginning. So that's been great. But I've heard a lot of commentary about our estimation of the need numbers, and those vary. And I'm not an expert, but I will need to understand in great detail what we believe our need is. What is the methodology at which we arrived at those numbers? For reasonable points of pushback, how do we answer those questions? Moving forward, how will we update those numbers as our community continues to flex and change post-COVID? So I will come with a lot of very specific questions, only to make sure that we're providing exactly what we need. And if it turns out those numbers are different than we thought in some way, that's totally fine. And it may mean we still build something, but it also may mean that there are other opportunities that are also helpful. So I'll just be looking for that. Assuming that we cross that Rubicon, I would absolutely support expediting Burlingame. When we know exactly what the need is, we should move as quickly as possible. And on number 4, it's tough for me. I'm not where I heard Rachel was, which is sort of a hard no. But I will need some strong convincing. I've drawn some ire from our own team about having these comments around city staff and prioritization. And it's not because I don't want every member of our city and our childcare to live here and have a great life, but there's some greater systemic questions around the system that I'll need some good convincing on.
Thanks, Skippy.
Ward,
okay
Ward,
with you,
hold on
and
one second.
Tori, if that's okay with you, I'll start.
One
Final
second,
comment.
Ward.
Go ahead, Tori.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Ward, go right ahead. You want to dovetail on that, I think?
Yeah, and I applaud the Kids First Advisory Board on trying to increase utilization of space. I think that's really important. We look what's going on with APSHA and all the surveys and all the unused rooms, and that I think it's good to increase capacity by building more, but by utilizing the space that we have. I look through those that are providing childcare in the yellow brick and little red schoolhouse in the cottage, and there's nobody that's supplying childcare over the weekends, and we have, I think, a workforce that works on Saturdays and Sundays. So ideally, I would like to see yellow brick used 7 days a week, the classrooms used 7 days a week, and to increase the utilization of those city assets. And I think I'm supportive of going in the direction that the Kids First Advisory Board was about, trying to get 5 days a week out of. I understand all of the nuances and all of the programs and everything else that's attached to that, but from a really high level, I want to increase capacity without having to build more, but I am supportive of building more and using the expedited approvals and the top 3. And I, as Rachel, for years and years and years, I really have a difficult time of trying to put one employee above the other for the availability of housing. And I know it's a catch-22. We can't increase the capacity of staff if there's no place to live, but to place one level of or one category of worker above the other is difficult. But if you look at the Burlingame, and if you look at some funding for 505 funds there, I'm open to ideas, but I do have those apprehensions. So again, to summarize, I'm really supportive of utilizing the spaces that we have as much as possible.
Thanks, Ward.
Thanks.
Steph?
Yeah, thanks, Tori. So just some final comments. I think just first off, my name is Stefan Reveal. I'm co-chair of the Kids First Board with Sue Wei. Now that we've talked about where we are, I would like to talk about where my thoughts on several items. First, Kids First is an organization that was created to distribute sales tax dollars that we receive to support early child education in this community. Those sales tax dollars were envisioned to support the community as that city council at that time recognized that we could not have a vibrant local community without housing as well as early child education. This creates a vibrant local community because an individual can see a way of living here and working here while knowing that their child is well taken care of by a high quality program. The current lack of spots at the infant age group has been a barrier and continues to be a barrier for local families who make a choice to stay in town. A perfect example is my coworker at Alpine Bank, President Mary Ryerson's son was attending a program 40 years ago that was not, sorry.
Okay.
My wife is trying to call me.
We've got you still got your audio.
Better on.
Everybody's flexing, right? So she was trying to find a spot for her son 40 years ago. And at that time, she could not find a high quality program. And so Mary's mother-in-law, with the help of that city council, was able to start a license program that was the start of what is now the Early Learning Center. Mary has spent the last 40 years pushing for additional early child education spaces in the Aspen area. We have improved by many metrics, but we continue to need improvement. This was very clear when Kids First started to bring together a group of business leaders from Aspen Skiing Company to Aspen Hospital and beyond. The constant story of the day was that we are in competition for the best employees and not with other resorts, but the whole country. Most of the working class of Aspen are new to Aspen, and they need support to keep staying here and not move back to the support of family or other places they know. There are already so many reasons for people to stay, like skiing, biking, outdoors, 300 inches of snow, and 300 plus days of sun. But when a person or couple, when a person or a couple decides to have a family, they look at several things. And the two main ones are housing and childcare. We are here to support childcare. But when a mom or dad to be find out that there are no spots that they need to make a choice. Do I stay or do I go? Can I afford some alternative, or do I stay home for the first year or 2 or 3 or 5? These business owners and managers will tell you that they are losing excellent employees to other areas that have more childcare, family member nearby, or some other attribute. Mainly, I'm asking you as the city council to keep your eye on the ball, and the ball is that 32 infant spaces is not enough. All the small tweaking in the yellow brick will not get us significantly improved numbers. The Kids First Board is doing all that we can to continue to tweak, and we will continue to improve that number. If this tax is to support early child education, we are failing, and we don't have the spaces to even allow that family to make the choice to stay today. This is especially true for people that are less wealthy and flexible in their work-life balance. The Aspen area is a high net worth area, as we all know, but the individuals that are struggling need our support. I sit on the financial aid review board of Kids First, and the board reviews applications for financial aid support to support parents to send their child to an early childhood education facility. It is important for kids to acquire language and socialization skills. We need to support our community at every economic level. The first comment brings me to my second, which is that wait lists are elusive. Now, why do I say that? If a family is pregnant and they are looking at childcare in the area, they might notice that the childcare available does not fit their need. Thus, they will not get on a wait list. Additionally, the same family might just leave the area and never will be on a wait list. I appreciate the work that we're doing on this area, but wait lists will only be one piece of the puzzle. Mainly, you will never put yourself on a wait list for an item that does not fit your needs. Finally, I would like to thank you all for your comments and time over the years, as well as the past 6 weeks. It has been good to have a community discussion that shows that we all have various opinions, but we all want to have high quality early childhood education in our area. This education is, in my opinion, is the foundation that creates a great society, but also the leaders of the future. I will leave you with this chart here. It shows the programs in the urban growth boundary, number of days, rough schedule, and their level of quality as described by Colorado Shines, which is a third-party research-based quality rating improvement system. Please note that if the group has not been rated but only licensed, they will have a level 1, as we discussed before. Mainly, there are many different programs that provide high-quality early childhood education, and that is an attribute. As I say in my banking job, all banks cannot be all things to all people. This is true with our programs. I'm very proud to have such a diverse group. Thank you for your time, support. Please reach out to me personally if you'd like to discuss. I know that Sue feels the same way. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Stefan. That was really well said.
Sue, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I was having some computer issues, so I definitely wanted to get back on there. Yeah. First of all, thank you to everybody. You know, I've been in childcare in this valley for a long time, and the efforts that the city of Aspen, the county, and everyone has given to childcare has been amazing, and helps us to move forward. Sustainability, of course, has been said. You know, having people live in this community. I know there's been a couple ideas have been tossed out there, and when we reference the yellow brick. And I'm going to reference it from owning a business, working for the Aspen Skiing Company, but I'm also director qualified. And I know it's really easy on the outside to come in from the outside and say, yeah, you can use 3 spaces and you could flex them. And, you know, you can have all these different programs in there at the same time, you know, to solve issues with childcare. Licensing is complex. You know, it needs to have a governing body. It needs to have a director. And it's not only the people that are licensed, but it is the space. And, you know, so yeah, in an ideal world, we would love to go in there and maybe take all these rooms or create new rooms and say, why don't we put 4 providers together and share staff to be able to solve a problem? You know, from a licensing capacity, from consistency with teachers, that is basically a very difficult task. And I just wanted to put that out there from an educational component and from being a director of a program for a long time. I offer drop-in childcare. It is not easy. You know, and the only way that it's feasible is that the ski company allows us to offer employee care and drop-in care, but to offer just employee care without the revenue from the drop-in care, it would definitely be a losing battle. And there are some people out there who may want to start a new program. And when you're looking at sustainability of a new program, you need to be able to, for the kids to be able to grow with the program from an educational component, but the business needs to have an infant room, a toddler room, a preschool room. And, you know, that keeps the business viable so that kids can grow up and move forward in one facility, you know, versus starting in just a room here and then where are they going to go next? So, you know, supporting a new facility is, you know, gives an opportunity for someone who is passionate about childcare to be able to consider starting a business and contributing to this community. So again, thank you. I don't know if you have any other questions concerning licensing. Again, I appreciate all the efforts that everybody has put into this and look forward to, being able to accomplish our goal. And that is increased capacity and continued quality care and retention of employees, as that is probably the most important thing that we have to look at that and make sure we don't lose sight of how we do keep our employees in this community with housing and other components that we can assist with.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you for that, Sue. Shirley, I also recognize that there's another board member on, Jessica Garrow. I didn't know if it was appropriate, but I would like to invite her if she had comments that she wanted to prepare or share with us. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
So I'll just look to Jessica. Jessica, I don't know if there's any input that you want to share with us as a board member of Kids First, but I invite you to if you'd like to.
Yeah, I don't know that I've got much to add other than it's been such an honor to be on the Kids First board, and I've been able to participate in some of the conversations around Burlingame, and I think we've got some great proposals there. Really excited to see some momentum, and just that this childcare issue is really broad, and as a board, we really are trying to tackle it from a number of different angles, and we just really appreciate your support.
Thanks, Jessica. Any follow-up questions from council members for staff or for Sue? Okay, I'll bring it back over to Shirley then. Shirley?
Oh, Skippy has a hand up.
Yep.
I do. Thank you. I do have one more question. I just want to make one comment, Steph, and I appreciate your comments that wait lists are elusive. And I think what I would say is wait lists to be accurate require a high degree of regular attentiveness, and even then they're never going to be perfect. I think the situation that you laid out was one example of that, but there are examples on the other side. I've certainly spoken to parents. I mean, I'm the age that all my friends have little kids. So yeah, there's a lot of people who weren't planning for kids or did and never thought about childcare. And right when that moment hits, we get on every list. We don't know what we're going to need. We don't care, but we hear it's hard and we're going to do that. So it does happen on both sides. And so it it requires, I think, more attentiveness and attention to try and hone in on that. But I agree with your general statement. The question I kind of wanted to dig into a little bit more is just, the reality of hiring, Shirley. We're talking about additional facility. We're talking about, whether it's flex space or changing providers, but we're talking about a lot of change, none of which will be possible without quality providers. And so can you kind of walk me through a bit about how you see the reality of hiring people in this moment and going forward and the reality of that?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball, first of all, but I have some ideas, and I watch the directors that are doing this well. And I think, the directors who seem to have more staff and consistently, it's rough. I won't kid anybody to say that, if anybody's got it made, because it's just hard to find people. We can make improvements, we can train people, but they have to be here in the first place to be available, to be trained. But I see directors that are basically always looking for staff. If somebody makes a comment to them or comes by and says, hey, I know somebody who loves to work with kids. Do you have any openings? What are the chances around here? Those directors will be, yeah, you know what? I don't have an opening right now, but I would love to talk to somebody. And they do a really good job of sort of sharing, gosh, you know, this person doesn't want to work full-time year round. They might not be a good fit for me, but I know somebody else that they would be a good fit for. And we've certainly done that. I will tell you honestly, our struggle right now, because we have a position open for our resource teacher who is a substitute in the programs. Part of our problem is that the people that apply for that job are the people who are already working in the childcare programs. So we have intentionally not, so far, hired those folks out of a program in order to be a substitute for programs because that makes no sense. So we are really looking at those long-term strategies. Well, short and long-term. I mean, money in your pocket is short-term. You know, if we can help provide a little bit more money that people they can put towards their housing, they can put towards their health costs, you know, whatever else they need, it's going to help them stay in that job a little bit more. Because honestly, part of the problem is the recruitment, but the bigger problem by far is the retention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Aspen, perennial problem. It's not just you guys.
exactly.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, just to kind of hear you right, is this is still a known challenge and a known unknown in many ways and a known known in others. That, you know, we have our eyes on best practices. We feel confident in training, but we don't have a list of 20 or 10 or even 2 people waiting in the wings to point to. And so this will be a longer term project.
You know, I wanted to go back, if I could, just for a couple of minutes. Your comment about wait lists it's been an issue for a long time. One of the things, and we're still in the process, so I didn't put it in here because there was nothing new yet to report, but we approached Roaring Fork Leadership with a project idea, like July, I think August, and that was to have one of their project teams do a civic project that looks at both sides. From the parents, how can we make it easier for families to know what their child care choices are? You know, maybe they know to call us, they ask their friends, they ask a lot of different people, but sometimes they don't. Like you said, nobody needs to know about childcare until all of a sudden they're having a baby and then they need it like right now. So I don't know what the outcome is going to be. This team is looking at it from that perspective. They're also looking at it from the perspective of the directors, because it is also very time consuming and challenging for directors to answer those phone calls, return phone calls, track people down, keep that list up to date. So I personally, I look forward to their recommendations. I think they're going to come up with some electronic platform that is going to allow the child care programs to put information about their program, the ages, the hours, the locations, all of that, and then allows parents to say, well, I guess I need to apply to these different programs because they're the ones that serve infants, or they're the ones that are in Aspen and we live and work in Aspen, or whatever that different version might be. So I don't know that for sure. That their project goes through May, but I don't know, I'm excited that we might have a good recommendation and a good outcome, because it is troublesome for everybody involved.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that they're working on it. It's a really complex problem. I mean, in addition to the things that you said, I mean, just COVID in and of itself, people showing up thinking they're going to be here forever, getting on wait lists and then not being here, or, you know, signing up and then deciding, oh, they've met this au pair and that's going to be something great. And then there's sort of the inner program dynamics where, you know, sometimes it can look good to have a long wait list. There's a lot of demand for the program. And like that scarcity mindset that can set in, probably not now because we're underserved, but if I get on this list and now there's a new facility, all of a sudden are people going to steal my customers? So it's complex. I don't envy the challenge, but I'm glad it's being taken up.
Thanks, Skippy. Rachel?
Yeah, I just to comment really quickly. Thank you, Shirley, for that work, and I appreciate that it's going to go forward. And as others have acknowledged, wait lists are really tough. But I think there really is an example with APCHA in that we don't keep wait lists for people who would like the rental units should they come up when they come up. It's just a very short application window, and then who has the longest work history. Those sort of things may change, but the essence was, and I think your privately managed facilities like Centennial or Castle Ridge will tell you the same thing. They don't like to call back through 15 people who've already found something or left, or you leave a message for somebody, and how many days do you wait for them to call you back before you call the next person on the list to tell them that they have a slot available? It's kind of like, oh my God, I was away. I didn't hear your phone call. Now I'm at the bottom of the list again. So, this is a universal problem, and I appreciate you guys wanting to try to tackle it and sort it out in some level. Nothing will get perfect, but maybe we'll get a little closer. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And Shirley, before we leave this, I did want to come back to the third leg of the stool. As I'm hearing it, we've got facilities, physical building capacity. We've got enrollees, families and kids, and then we've got the providers. And those are kind of the three legs of a stool that I see right now. And so I wanted to come back to the question about Burlingame and the planning that we're doing there. Some of the comments and perhaps concerns are about meeting needs in the future and not overshooting that. So I just wanted to have a brief conversation about that in regards to, what's moving forward now is council's initiative for building a facility at Burlingame. But in recent conversations, the school district has expressed their intentions of building 5 new classrooms, I believe it is, on their campus and with an expansion of the cottage, if you will. And then moving past that, the city council is also currently doing some planning for the lumberyard and looking at possible childcare facility there. So with all that, can we just speak for a moment about that? Are we in different entities moving towards the same goal? Is there a potential that we are overbuilding either that build capacity? And that means in 2 respects, as Skippy brought up, what's our potential for if we have all those facilities online within the next 5-8 years, what's our opportunities for staffing those and having providers fill those? So just wanted to have that conversation and make sure that we are aware of it. We're all intent and supportive of the goal. I just want to make sure that we're working together. Again, the school district announcement that they're looking at literally breaking ground for this expansion as early as this summer. So I just wanted, what's your take on that? How does that work into our future planning? What are we looking at?
Gosh, where to start? But yeah, I was involved early on in some design meetings with the school district. And then I honestly didn't hear anything for quite a while. I was just recently contacted by one of the design firms that was bidding for the design for that building. So, and I haven't heard any more since then. I need to follow up a little bit because I've heard the same things you've heard, that they're going to be moving, they have 5 classrooms now. So are they going to have those 5 and an additional 5? And do they intend that to be for more than, so far their big focus has been their employees, as well as the Colorado preschool program funding that goes through the school districts. But I'm not entirely clear if I know Sarah has talked with them about being open year round. I don't know if that decision has been made. They have really struggled this year, I would say, and they'd be the first to admit it. They've struggled with COVID. They've struggled with staff turnover, with classrooms being closed, teachers being out. So that's a really good question to follow up on, and I will certainly do that before our next work session, have more information for you. I will also dig a little deeper. We've we've looked at school enrollment, we've looked at births in Pitkin County. You know, they aren't big numbers, like if you were looking at a bigger county. So percentage wise, yeah, we might have dropped a few percentage points, but it's really a difference of 4 babies. You know, we went from 137 to 134 born the last year. That still far outweighs the number of not only infant spaces, but if you multiply that times 5, we don't have that many licensed spaces. I mean, that sort of assumes that those ages are distributed equally, and they're not entirely. But if you had that many children in each of those 5 years before they went to school, we don't have that many licensed spaces. So I agree. I think we need to look more closely at what percentage of increase that we really are looking at. So, and to keep looking at that, because as Burlingame gets built out and as Lumberyard gets built out, that's going to change those numbers again. I think in terms of young families.
Yeah, an amazing amount of guesswork and future predicting going on. But yeah, I appreciate you recognizing that there is some more information to be gained from the school district, what their intentions are, and as well what maybe our role is to partner in as an entity that can encourage them for that year-round availability and hours and availability and capacity that suit the needs of the greater community and not just the school campus. But so thank you. I appreciate you following up on that. Rachel?
Yeah, thank you, Tori, for raising that topic. I think it's good to all discuss. And I actually was going to make a comment for Shirley and the Kids First board to consider as well as we try to look at this. And I don't want to make the problem worse, believe you me. But, you know, when we're saying there's X many births in Pitkin County, that really doesn't relate to our workforce, which doesn't relate to our workforce childcare needs. When, you know, we don't have an exact idea, but we know that a large amount of our workforce comes from Garfield County and comes from Eagle County within the Valley. I mean, and if you even look at APCHA as an example, we have what we call the ownership exclusion zone, where you cannot own a free market property as far away as Rifle and on the other side of the canyon or Glenwood Springs. So, you know, we're acknowledging that our workforce comes from that far away, and that's why they can't own a free market home and an APCHA home. Or, you know, so if we're really only saying, well, how many births do we have in Pitkin County, and that somehow is a gauge of what our employment workforce childcare needs are, then we're off. We're off by a large percentage. And, you know, I'm not saying that we, and I've said it before, we Aspen alone can't solve all of Pitkin County's problems, let alone the Valley's. But I think it's just worth noting, if we're trying to get a grip on need, parents don't like to leave their kid 45 miles away. They, you know, maybe if one parent is still near that place, but if both parents are working remotely or far away, they like to have the child relatively close, so that if they get a call from the school that they fell down, hit their head, and they have to get stitches, that parent can be there really quickly and take the kid to the hospital, because the child care facility can't, you know. And so, you know, I just want to put that out there, that if we're just saying how many kids are born in Pitkin County each year, we are missing the mark by probably a large percentage. And that's part of the dynamic. I mean, it could well be that a lot of our child care spaces now are taken by people who live in Eagle County and Garfield County, and their babies were born at the Glenwood Springs Hospital, and that's why we don't have spaces for kids born at the Aspen Valley Hospital. But I'm not saying it matters where you were born or anything like that. I'm just saying, let's not limit the scope of our numbers to an artificial number. Thank you.
Yeah, and you do broaden the conversation there quite a bit, Rachel, because that then taps into kind of some of the comments that Ward had earlier about the purposeful funding and facility building for, our county, our local residents. But I totally understand. I'm not arguing either side, but you definitely broadened the conversation there a little bit.
And what I'm trying to say is those people qualify today for our childcare slots because they live or work in Aspen. And that's why we're doing two different gauges. We're looking one at births in Pickens County, and on the other side, we're looking at workforce demand. And workforce demand is not at all related to the birth rate in Pickens County.
Right.
These are qualified tenants, they are potentially qualified for our subsidy and for our programs because they work in Aspen. Thank you. In the urban growth boundary.
Yeah. Diane, comment here, and then Ward.
You're on mute, Diane.
Sorry. Thanks to Shirley and the board members. Because I spent 14 months in APSHA when I first started, I didn't know a lot about childcare. I've had a deep dive in the past few weeks, and I've had an opportunity to talk to a number of childcare providers, providers and early childhood educators directly. And this is more than just the folks that we're talking to at the Yellow Brick. And what I found to be really interesting about wait lists and the things we need to remember is that in a classroom, we're talking 12 to 16 kids, right? So wait lists in the 50s is a big number. I'll give you an example. One provider had gone through and done a ton of cleaning, right? Called parents, double checked, etc. 48 on the wait list, 16 of those current in a program, but just in that one program, 32. And when I look through Shirley's list, right, and she's got basically the folks that are close to here, 165 infants, 98 toddlers, 178 preschool, 473, and a Down Valley program that has over 500 on their wait list. And I did talk to one provider who's doing some work to try to, with the other providers, to try to dedupe some lists. And Skippy, they thought initially that people would be on 5 or 6 lists. They found that at a max, there were people who were on 2 or 3, and there were some who were just on 1. So I wanna add scale to this, right? We are never gonna have a perfect number, but when you're talking about a classroom holds 12 to 16 kids, this is an acute need. And I think Shirley's point about as we build out, as we occupy Burlingame Phase 3 this summer and build the lumberyard, it's likely to be properties that are particularly attractive, especially Burlingame, to young families. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Ward?
Yeah, this kind of falls into the categories of lies, damn lies, and statistics. And we just need quality numbers. If you have a Pickens County that has a few births and you add a couple of people, that could be a 50% increase in the birth rate. But so it's just actual numbers, and percentages can be misleading. So just good quality numbers, and appreciate what Diane said about, I think I'll make some assumptions about what a wait list is, and Stefan at the Kids First Board said, well, some don't take their names off lists and that it's elusive, but I guess it's going to be imperfect if the numbers are going to be imperfect, but there is a need for quality numbers. And I think there's also, as I understand it, that the younger the infants require a higher teacher to student ratio. So it's a lot more expensive to provide childcare for infants, and those can be subsidized by having a mixed age group, so that some of, if you have, like some of these have, most of them have infants, toddlers, and preschool, but the preschool can help subsidize the infants. So again, the accessibility and availability is important, and lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Thanks, Ward. And then I don't know if we've got more structured presentation or comments here. I just do want to take an opportunity. Over the last 6 weeks, all of us have been inundated with emails and comments from providers as well as parents. If infants and toddlers could use email, then I'm sure we'd have heard from them as well. But all I want to touch on that right now is whether it's the viewing public or for council as well, to just get on the same page. My understanding is of right now is that the providers at the Yellow Brick are still in talks and negotiations with Kids First Board, as well as our staff representatives, about how to work towards that goal of increasing the utilization and thereby the capacity at the Yellow Brick. There have been a number of suggestions that have come our way, and those are all being considered as they've all been forwarded on to the Kids First Board, as well as Kids First staff and our own management team here. So if anybody has specific questions, I think that's okay, but I don't really want to get into too deep of discussions about what those negotiations look like at this time. We do have, as Shirley pointed out, we have another follow-up meeting on related topics coming up in just a month. So we are still in the opportunity zone for coming up with the solutions that are going to work, not just for our community, but for all parties. And if Diane or Shirley wants to comment, if I gotten anything incorrect there, please correct that. And then I'll see if there are council members that have any specifics that they want more information on.
You got that right, Mr. Mayor, exactly right. And I'll add that we are going to be, I'll be presenting, so the current providers that we're working with, and we are working to keep the current providers, that we're going to be talking to the Kids First Board on February 4th about their requested lease changes. So they're putting things in writing, what they'd like to see. And I'm working with Shirley and the city attorney, as well as our two board chairs, co-chairs on that. So that'll be happening at the Kids First Board meeting, Friday, February 4th at 11:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Dan. If there's no specific question at this time, you can always follow up with Diane to get more information if you're interested, guys. Skippy, go right ahead.
Yeah, no question. Just I'll just kind of a brief comment, and I'll stay out of the specifics so you guys can do your work. First I just want to really applaud the Kids First Board for following through on council direction. We were clear. We want more capacity, and I understand that sitting on the Kids First Board, looking at the resources that are available, how one would come to the conclusion that we have some programs that are not fully utilizing those facilities. And the not easy, frankly, a difficult decision would be to try to get more capacity out of those groups. And I could see how the group would come in and think, well, we'll ask for 5, we won't ask for 7, we're making a compromise, that seems reasonable. So I understand how we got there, and I really appreciate that. But like Tori said, best laid plans of mice and men don't always work out as we intended. And I'm really glad that we are working with these groups now, because the thing that has been made abundantly clear to me, and like I said, I've had a lot of conversations, and Diane, like you, many parents and providers, but also a lot of people outside, which has been frankly a gift for me to get up to speed. But the thing that's become clear is that these groups deliver really great childcare. You just don't have tens and tens and tens of parents writing novels and spending hours on the phone if it's not something great. And I recognize that sometimes we need to break eggs to make an omelet, but these are like golden eggs. These are our children in our community, and you don't break the special golden egg unless Thomas Keller's there to, make them, and that somebody is there for a really special dinner to eat them. And so just hearing how difficult it will be to, train and find replacements or that, I think the yes and solutions are what we really need to be looking at. And I know that some of these relationships are strained, but we're called Kids First for a reason. And I know that we can, work through that in the best way possible to really deliver for the kids. And so I encourage you guys to move forward with creativity, with openness. And Tori's talked a lot about, mobile facilities or other movements or flex plans. We've seen some things come through. I think we should really look at all of that stuff, and it requires supplementals. That's okay. And the existing groups can and should be partners, whether that's training new staff or otherwise. So I see a way to yes. I just want to validate the good work of everybody. And I know that we can find something that will be good. Because the last thing we want to see is kids who have great childcare go without. That would really be a tragedy.
Thank you for those words, Skippy. Appreciate it. Rachel, and then John.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate what you're saying there, Skippy, as well. And I thank the Kids First Board. I do want to note that there's a lot of parents out there who are not getting quality childcare at all because there's no capacity for them. And I don't want to only hear from the side of people who've gotten something good and don't want to lose any aspect of it while we don't listen to the people who have nothing and who are having latchkey kids, not working the second job they need to pay their rent and things like that because of the lack of childcare. Yeah. There's two sides to that coin. Yeah. And as much as anything, I really just wanted to request that at our next meeting on this, Shirley, if you don't already, but that we compile a bit of a history of the yellow brick so that we really can take a comprehensive look at it. That facility, I believe, cost us around 3.6 million, was it? Or was it 3.4? It was $1.9 million direct cash out of the Kids First Fund, plus a significant funding exchange from the Open Space Fund to buy the ball fields, maintain them for the first 10 years. And I think there's also been some pretty significant capital improvements to that building that should be included in that history over the length of time that the city has owned it and has been operating it. But there's a lot of public investment in that building that is not rented at anywhere near commercial rates. And similar to how we're hearing, how do you right-size the housing program and create greater efficiencies and utilization, I think that it's important that we do look at the utilization of this public asset, which I would take a random guess. It's probably close to $5 million of investment, if not more, between security, boilers, roofing, bathrooms, everything else, recarpeting. We've put a lot of money into making that a wonderful facility for wonderful kids. And I'd like to have as many wonderful kids able to benefit from that as possible. Thank you.
Yeah. Rachel, I just want to say I totally agree with you, and it's really important to see both sides. And I think the right sizing example is such a perfect example. I mean, if you think back to when the issue was first raised back in 14, the community kind of lost its mind because they didn't hear we want to get more out of the system. They heard we're going to kick out people who have been a vital part of our community. And we said, no, that's not what we're talking about. And I think the same thing applies here, right?
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, I just wanted to first thank Diane for the information about the wait list. I think that really reaffirms that there is a very firm need for more childcare. I want to thank the Kids First Board because, as every one of us has stated, this has generated a tremendous amount of emails and phone calls, really even more than the moratorium has in my experience. And also in my experience, whenever I explain to the people about the issues with childcare, the fact that the spaces are subsidized by the city and that they're underutilized, there's way greater understanding of why we are doing the things we're doing. And it started with the Kids First Board. So thanks for your strength and leadership on that. And lastly, I just want to say I'm glad that we're moving, seems fairly quickly on this issue. It was just last summer that we made it one of our top 3 priorities. So thanks to staff, thanks to Kid First, and I really think we're on the right track here.
Thank you, John. Shirley, any last information you want to share with us, or anything you need from council?
No more presentation. I do know that childcare has risen to the top in the last few weeks, and that it has taken an enormous amount of everyone's time and I would say emotional energy too. So I thank you for that. I don't think that we could all be hanging in there if it wasn't for the support all the way up through and including city council. So that means a great deal.
Thank you. Well, we're very appreciative of the work that you do and the work that the Kids First Board is doing, as well as everybody in the Yellow Brick. You know, we're so fortunate to be in the community we're in. We see needs that we have, and we're trying to address those, but let us not forget the great things that we do have going on here, and the great providers that we have, and the great staff members that they get this care to the families and the kids that need it. So thank you goes really to you guys. Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
If that's all for council comments on this issue, that would be our first agenda item tonight. And we will see you again, Shirley, in just about a month, I think you said. So thank you. Thank you. Diane, thank you for your participation in that.
Thank you, everybody.
Council, that brings us to board reports and some council updates. Also an opportunity for council members to talk about anything that they've been thinking of, experiencing, seeing, and the like. But let's go ahead and we'll go one at a time. You can start with your board report. And then if there's another additional item that you want to talk about, we can go there as well. So if anybody would like to start, do I have anybody with board report that they would like to share? Start with John. Thank you.
We had a Nordic Council meeting last week, January 19th, and we discussed an ad campaign, or I'm sorry, there is an ad campaign that's due to hit the paper soon. It's going to educate cross-country trail use about dogs on trails, walking on the trails, fat bikes on trails, no motorized vehicles, and private property crossings. Nordic Council is trying very hard to get the cross-country ski snowmaking system on our city council agenda, and to get Parks started on this project, although I know Parks is already well-versed in what's going on with this. Matt let us know that there's $300,000 in the 2025 budget for snowmaking, and so that it could possibly accelerate it a couple years. Water issues is the #1 priority for starting the snowmaking system for a small loop track because of global warming. The focus right now is on one location for snowmaking, although there are 2 possible locations that could work. We're also going to try and get the county up to speed and open space and trails, and a motion was made to get Craig Ward started on researching everything that needs to be done. So he resigned from the board so he could do that. And our next meeting is February 16th. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Can I put a little request for the Nordic Council? This is maybe one of my peas. I love the All Creek Trail. I don't love where it crosses a lot of roads, and there are a couple of road crossings that could, I think, very easily just leave a little bit of snow for a 10-foot wide section on the All Creek Trail. It seems like taking your skis on and off a couple of times each way is kind of a pain, but so that's just been a continuing peeve of mine, or wish on my wish list for the Nordic Trail system. It's quite a it's a huge asset for our community, the 5th mountain. So thank you, John, for serving on that board.
You're welcome. You're going to cover the core board?
Yeah, I'll cover that.
Okay, awesome. I'll talk to Chris Peterson about grooming the road crossings.
Ward, you know, crossing roads on your skis is a great way to turn a skate setup to a classic.
Well, I found a way to just walk very gently. But generally, they're just two crossings that are pretty bad, and it's a very minor thing, not as big a deal as the dogs and people walking on them. But I think All Creek has been better this year for pedestrians, and I haven't seen dogs. I've seen some evidence of elk and deer, but I don't think that the rules are going to affect the elk or deer.
Other board reports and updates?
I'll go with the since we're talking core. We had a core board meeting, and I continue to be really encouraged with the direction that core is going with our interim executive director of the organization, more structure to the finances, more feedback from staff. It's really in the last couple 3 months. It's really 2 months anyway. It's really come together, and it's a I think much better presentation for the board meetings. We did get some feedback or pushback from a couple of members of the board on the lumber yard, and what our concerns are for greenhouse gas. And I assured the board members that City Council is very aware of greenhouse gas, of embodied carbon in materials, of traffic studies, of the other thing was county asked about, well, you're increasing traffic from the ABC into town, but and the increased carbon production for that. And I think that my response to that was that it's better to have people, if you're going to have to drive, first of all, that it's built on transportation, mass transit lines, and that if people are only driving from the lumber yard into town, you're producing less carbon than if you're driving from Glenwood into town. But those were parochial issues about the lumber yard. In some of the consolidated financial sheets, it's there's some kind of oddities with core in that some of the funds have been carried on the books for a long time because grants are given to, say, the Snowmass Welcome Center, the Center for the Mastodons or whatever, Discovery Center. And they remain on the books for a number of years until they get spent. So the numbers are off by a little bit, but there seems to be a pretty healthy assets, which kind of begs, are there more funds that we can utilize, or are we overfunding? And I think that the consensus is that some of the numbers lie a little bit, just like municipal accounting lies with transfers from year to year. But I'm just continue to be encouraged in the direction that core is going. And we also went over the recruitment for a permanent executive director and job descriptions and qualities, et cetera. So, John, if there's anything that I've missed and you want to add to, but I'm just really positive about where core is going.
No, I agree. Personally, I like our interim director. Wouldn't mind seeing him be the permanent director, but that's another story. I definitely agree with you. I like the direction things are going. It seems much more cohesive than it was when I first started.
Thank you, Ward. Other board reports. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. I was kind of sitting here thinking that maybe let Skippy cover more of APCHA in a few minutes. We've really only had 1 or 2 meetings this year thus far, but give you more of a rundown from the Club 20 legislative session I just went down to in Denver last week on Thursday and Friday. And this is something they do every year. It's held in conjunction with 2 other groups. Let me back up for a second. Club 20 is the western 20 counties of Colorado. And they join up with Progressive, it used to be called Progressive 15, now they just call themselves Pro 15, and they are Southeast Colorado, and the second group is Action 22. So it's the voices of rural Colorado, and it really kind of, with those two groups joining Club 20, we circle the major metro Front Range communities to talk about what rural concerns are. So I found it to be a really well-constructed schedule and a lot of really great information. So try to run over things fairly quickly. Geraldine, let me get the name right. Geraldine Francis, new last name, with Colorado Housing Finance Authority, gave a presentation on the innovations that they are moving forward to try to get housing done faster. And modular homes is one of the elements. They've also opened kind of a more of a small project that some communities only need 8 units or 12 units, aren't looking for 30 or 40 units. And that they're trying to deal and actually work to save mobile home parks more and convert what they can to modulars. So that was really interesting. But what was particularly interesting, a couple things came out of that. I spoke with a representative from Telluride with, CAST, and she mentioned that area medium income is a real problem from them, and that the CAST Housing Task Force made it like their first or second priority to try to change area median income. And I have a feeling it's the same issue I've been raising for a while, that if you average in all your retirees and the second homeowner wealth that has come to your community, you're not getting a very accurate picture of what your workforce is earning and what they should be paying for housing. Kind of a second item, which is interesting to me as well, but Chantel Unflug, who I think others have met through CHAFA and the housing division there, said, we're really starting to question, where did the 30% of your income should be your housing cost come from? And why is that a standard that is still used everywhere and to this day? And the answer was that it just comes from the mortgage industry. And that was an approximation of what they thought you should be able to afford. But no one has tested that to see if it's at all accurate, or especially given cost of healthcare, high cost of living areas for basic food and other things, whether it should be a lower standard of your annual income. I don't know, but it was a very interesting conversation. And, I believe Kelly McNichols Curry has been part of the state's housing task force to look at how to allocate these monies appropriately across the state for housing production that they've allocated in the state budget from the COVID Rescue Acts, the various two. So I don't want to get too much more confusing on that one, but I did want to say that there was a great housing presentation by Jerry Lynn, and perhaps we can take another look at what they're doing with CHAFA in the future. They had a great water panel, and I think that this is something that we all need to be paying attention to. I was really interested to hear the representative from the South Platte, who I have met before through previous water work, say that the South Platte agriculture feels that they're short 500,000 acre feet of water right now, here and now today. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because we're already sending over about 500,000 acre feet from the West Slope, but that's apparently not enough. And our water from our shed doesn't go to the South Platte for the most part. It's more Pueblo area, but they're kind of trying to look for more water. And the stat as well is that the South Platte is expected to have 6 million people living in that basin by the year 2050. So growth is just not slowing down there. And I did get a chance to chat with him for a moment afterwards and said, hey, you can talk all you want about state legislation on water and money for water projects, but until people stop trying to build quarter-acre bluegrass lawns throughout the entire South Platte, they're going to be the ones who suck agriculture dry in this state. And so we're definitely seeing that. There's a potential for an anti-speculation law coming forward this session. But the water users don't seem, and water right holders don't really want an anti-speculation law. They're concerned that it will take out their ability to sell their ag water to municipal uses in the future at some level. And so I have no idea what's going to happen with that, but we'll see. On to other exciting topics with the session. I was really touched that they had a representative from the Colorado Farm Bureau speaking about mental health issues and concerns within the ag community and the rural communities that they're just starting to face. And that it really paralleled a lot of what we've been learning as a community and trying to bring our community around. But there was a lot of talk about the isolation of ranchers and farmers, economic challenges, addiction problems, and there was a good session on the opioid problems throughout these areas. But they have really created some new business cards to leave on counters at grocery stores and dime stores and let people pick up and get over the stigma of going for mental health issues. But just interesting to hear an entirely different type of community from the classic resort community dealing with mental health issues are dealing with the same sort of challenges. I want to let you know that former Secretary of State Bernie Busher was present there, and he has submitted an initiative to the title setting committee for a potential ballot initiative for this November. It would be a citizen initiative, and it is somewhat in response to the initiative we saw last year to reduce property taxes for fire districts, ambulance districts, hospital districts, and everyone else that failed at the ballot. And what his initiative essentially will say is that you cannot have statewide ballot questions that will impact the budgets of local municipalities, that you shouldn't have the entire state voting on some sort of one-size-fits-all blanket that would end up bankrupting the San Luis Valley of their water service. You know, it just was a little bit absurd, and I think we'll see something countering that. I don't have exact language from him with me now. He read it at the meeting, but I told him I would be happy to support that initiative and gather signatures. Phil Weiser, our state attorney general, was there at the session on the second day. And he, I have to say this, he got a rousing applause from the entire Club 20, Pro 15, Action 22 group. And in the course of the questions and answers, every single one of those communities or pieces of those communities were able to say, when you came out and talked to us in January, when you came out and fixed this problem in May, when you, and people were just astounded that he had really gotten to all corners of the state and was listening to all the problems, whether it was consumer protection, opioid epidemic, all sorts of issues. I was able to chat with him very briefly at the end of the meeting about the concerns that we are starting to see with the new POSCO type of corporate ownership of a home that then becomes you buy into the LLC and you get your vacations for free forever without paying sales tax, which we're starting to see pop up in our community, whether it's Villar or POSCO or this or that. And he said he would have his office begin to take a look at it. I said, I think there's real concerns that this is a dodge from paying local sales tax, that they're selling people vacations forever in any number of the homes that they've acquired across the country, but while you're here, you pay no sales tax. And so I'm kind of asking, how do we run the city government and the services that guests normally need, whether it's the buses or the police department, when you can come and stay and not pay sales tax, let alone it's a form of fractionalizing homes that were never meant to be fractional homes, and it's literally a new form of short-term rental. So he said that they would start taking a look at that, and I also had an attorney from within the group. I have his card. I'm going to give it to Jim True, who said that, you know, they're having some real discussions in their office about whether these things are not actually securities issues that should be regulated by the Federal Securities Commission, the SEC, because they're offering something of benefit to their investors by buying in. And is it, whenever you're offering something of benefit for buying into a corporation, it's more than just a simple real estate transaction. It might actually be a securities issue. So I don't know if there's different rules that they need to play with by that or not, but I know we as a community need to take a look at that very carefully. And then finally, think I'll wrap up. I might have another couple of notes, but Shoshana Liu, the executive director of CDOT, was there. She's always a great speaker, and she spent most of her time going over how CDOT has really been spreading its money out into rural roads across the state, and that the focus isn't just the I-25 corridor anymore, that there's getting a little more equity and fairness in how those dollars are allocated to rural regions. So I think that was well received. I did catch her after the conversation to ask a little bit about our entrance to Aspen, let her know that we were planning to spend some money for re-education to reintroduce the different components that have not yet been completed of the record of decision while we've completed numbers of others. I thanked her for her work on the roundabout this time around, but kind of asked if we're able to move the entrance forward a little more, where do we sit? How do we deal with this? And her answer was, of course, you can't just jump to the top of the 10-year plan line because a lot of people are in there, but that they were thinking a little about maybe redoing how 10-year plans are done in the future. That is probably a much further along conversation. But then she said, if your entrance was really formatted and presented as completing a BRT system, that the funding was necessary to complete a bus rapid transit system, that there were different federal funding sources available for something like that, that would be outside of the normal 10-year plan and would not necessarily be in conflict. And so I just wanted to say that it seemed like there may be a bit of a door there that if we get to the right point to pursue, to actually see some of these improvements occur, and certainly working in conjunction with RAFTA, who runs the BRT. But as we all know, the bus rapid transit system ends at the roundabout, essentially. and that is the last leg. So maybe there's a chance there. Looking really quickly, there was one other item I really wanted to mention that I think we're going to have Pete Stryker and our finance department take a real look at and then explain it to us. And I think I got the numbers right here. House Bill 21-1164. And that is a school district funding measure. And it says that each school district will have to raise their mill levy by 1 mil a year until reaching 28 mills or their reset point. And I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know where our mill levy is for our school district in terms of their reset point. I think this may be some school districts that have lowered their mill levy over time, but I've seen it before discussed that, they don't like communities that, quote, could pay 100% of their school costs and get $0 from the state, having, quote, what some people were calling an artificially low mill levy. And I don't know if this means that our school district's property tax mill levy will be increasing by 1 mil a year for the foreseeable future. And how does that interplay with the City of Aspen sales tax that we have given to the school district, whether it will still be needed to be renewed in the future or not, or, really what will that property tax burden potentially do to our community, our taxpayers, if the school district's up to 28 mills or something. I really don't know where they are now, but you don't want to get to a point where our school district is sending money back to the state. And I think that's kind of what they want is this interplay there. So anyhow, I have to have Pete and other people really check into that. I just wanted to bring it back as something we need to look into. And I think that was the main download from those 2 days. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Rachel. Let's go over to Skippy then. Skippy, did you want to do a little APSHA update and other board reports?
Yeah, John hit Nordic. I've got APSHA and Burlingame Housing. I also just wanted to say, Rachel, you're talking about Picasso and some of these models. I met the head of policy and community outreach for Picasso a couple days ago, and he's either living in Aspen or he's spending half his time here. So if you or anyone else wanted to meet him, I don't have his number, but I could certainly get it. And I know he's been involved in things. For instance, I think it was Breckenridge, he said, or Telluride, or maybe both. There were some short-term rental things on the ballot, and he actually led some alternative short-term rental things, which were still actually helpful, but kind of the watered-down version as an alternative. So anyways, if anyone's interested in talking to him, it'd be good. And I think, there's a deeper conversation around this issue. Dealing with the impacts of new models from a regulatory standpoint is super important. But I do get my antenna up a little bit about concern of reacting to one model of fractionalization in a way that can actually harm us down the line, because there's going to be a lot of fractionalization of real estate coming forward. And there's a lot of ways that I think it could be a really beneficial tool to the city. Just as an example, we talk a lot about affordable business and who can be affordable if you're paying. Remember when Tony Mazza was like, that number is wrong about rent? Well, Catch Steak is paying 85 grand a month now. So that ship sailed real quick. You're not going to get anything affordable. So, Ward and other have talked about purchasing buildings. Well, that's a lot of money, right? Well, there's opportunities on the blockchain to fractionalize a REIT. So every member of the community could buy into a building, whether you have $1 million or $5, the community gets a building with rent control, and each one of our community members would have the opportunity to participate in the upside appreciation of that structure. So anyways, it's just to say, I think, it might be time to start digging into that fractionalization space at a staff level and understanding it. Okay. APSHA. Pretty short meeting, actually. We reviewed a updated new deed restriction. As a reminder, kind of back to last year, we regularly update our deed restriction, but in this case, we are looking for people to come under the new deed restriction so that our Standards for Sellers program can work, so that sunsetting deed restrictions hopefully can come back under. And so this new updated version just sort of further spelled out some of the advantages for current homeowners. Advantages including, as we've talked about before, the opportunity to make capital improvements in the green space that can be applied to the sale of the unit, to reset their 10%. So if you bought 40 years ago or something and you bought your place for 150 grand and you've only had that very small nugget to do work and you'd like to do more, you'll have the opportunity to do that. And it further detailed that stuff out. And so that is continuing to move forward. And then we spent our time looking at lottery chances. There was feeling that there may be an opportunity for improvement in how we do that. Specifically, people that have either been here for a very long time. We allow for additional chances or percentage of win, 4 to 8 years, 8 to 12, 12 to 16. But once you're in the 20 and 30 range, you don't continue to accrue any additional chances. And so should that have been a thing? Or people that have lost, a huge number of lotteries, should that be a thing? Or should we look at the proportions differently? And we we looked at a bunch of scenarios, and ultimately the consensus was we're not going to make any changes at this time. Changes to the underlying numbers just had a massive impact on relative opportunities for winning between people of 4 and 8 years, for instance, in a way that just felt uncomfortable and felt like solving for a problem that really we haven't seen. And while the group all agreed that having some additional benefit for longer term people felt good, that it also came with trade-offs, which is that people who do win are likely to use that unit for less time. It comes with complications for staff having to go back in and reprogram elements of home track, which would be a non-unsubstantial cost and time allotment, and a recognition that even though it's not in the numbers, being here longer does convey a benefit of having additional opportunity to win, in that you get to apply for more lotteries, and luck is luck. And so you may not win, but sort of the confluence of that was, we don't want to make changes at this time. You know, we would be interested maybe in the future in some additional chips for the long-term individual, but it just wasn't, the lemon wasn't worth the squeeze at this point. That was really the option meeting. I'll pause for questions and then I can move on to Burlingame housing. Cool, great question.
There.
Burlingame housing meeting. So just sort of general update around maintenance, capital improvements. Things are kind of trucking along as to be expected.
And that's Burlingame seasonal, Skippy?
Yeah, sorry, the rental units. Where I lived my second year up here. It was fun. Back when we had rentals for new employees. And then we were talking about potentially going to an RFP for new management of the facility. We are going to move forward with that RFP, but we kind of got a bomb dropped on us during the meeting, which is that the current provider, BPM, said they're not interested in applying, and they're going to be pulling out, and it kind of caught everybody by surprise. They had a number of things that they pointed to. Staff has followed up and is following up on some of those things, but it really caught the board by surprise. So the RFP will continue to go forward. We're fully expecting, and they've said there'll be a warm handoff and everything will be to our preferences around a transition. But it does raise some concerns, because in initial outreach prior to the RFP, do we want to go out for one? You know, all the big dogs, Frias, Romero Group, et cetera, were approached and just said, nope, we don't have the capacity or the staff to take on anything else. So yeah, we'll be going out, but it was a little bit of a bombshell. That's it.
Thank you, Skippy. Let's see. I'll do a couple quick board reports. Last Wednesday was the Wheeler Advisory Board meeting. I will tell you right from the start that last Wednesday was the day after my booster shot. And so groggy does not even explain it. My booster affected and impacted me for about 24 hours. So I participated in the meeting by listening with my video off. As a matter of fact, I think board might have been on the meeting as well, but again, my recollection's not that great. I will tell you, however, what we did cover. And what we did cover at the Wheeler board meeting was more about COVID, about what's going on at the Wheeler. I think all of council was alerted to the fact that things like the Laugh Fest is not going to be able to be put together for this year. And I use that as one example to really typify the conversation that we had. And that conversation is that it is not just about artist availability. It is not just about our staffing capability, and it is not just about audiences who wish or don't wish to be in a theater at this time. There are a lot of factors that go into putting on shows at the Wheeler. We have had cancellations for every one of those, whether it was our own in-house technical staff that was suffering from possible COVID transmissions, or if it was artists and their reticence to be performing live again. Nonetheless, we've had cancellations, but the takeaway really is that the Wheeler staff is working as hard as they can to do as much as they can. Their desire is to be open, whether that requires us minimizing some capacities for different shows, or like we've done, we've put in some different COVID regulations and requirements. Nonetheless, the Wheeler wants to be open. And so to that, like I said, while the Laugh Fest has been postponed, They are rescheduling other acts that have been canceled. For example, John Oates looking at rescheduling and other shows. Other shows are being maintained. For example, just last week, there was the opportunity for a partnership with Gay Ski Week, and that one did happen. And we also have a comedian coming up for 2 shows on a Friday night. That's Jim Gaffigan. So the Wheeler Opera House is doing the best that they can to maintain operations as best they can. But that is definitely putting holes in the schedule. That was the big takeaway from the Wheeler Opera House meeting. The other one last week was a RAFTA meeting. At our RAFTA meeting last week, a lot of beginning of the year business to take care of, things like the CEO performance review and such. I'm pulling up the agenda now just to let you know, items such as designating the location for public notices, RAFTA governing policies. There were a few other things that were on the discussions, the Crystal Valley Methane Working Group and what they're doing and moving forward. Election of officers. Dan Richardson is no longer going to be chairing the board. I think, let's see, Jeannie McQueenie, I believe, is coming up, will be taking over that position. Other items that came up were just some more regional bike share and the first last mobility study that was shared with us, and continued support for working on the first and last mile stuff. So RAFTA board discussions last week, not a whole bunch of new to add to the discussion. Ward might want to chime in on some of that. Also did have a Board of Health meeting. In our Board of Health meeting, good news, you know, our expectation is that our COVID case counts and our positivity rates have plateaued. What we've seen even since last week is those numbers coming down. We're still having some difficulties getting real accurate numbers from lab testing, as lab testing skyrocketed over the last 30 days. But our numbers are indicating to us that we have seen a decrease in transmission and positive case results. We've also seen not as dramatic, but still a large drop off in the positivity rate as well. So we're seeing good numbers right now. Obviously, everybody is still waiting. Last week was a very busy week here in Aspen with Gay Ski Week, as well as with the X Games in town. So we're definitely going to be waiting through this week to see what the numbers reflect and see how people are doing. But you know, the beat goes on with this one. We are still having conversations about whether it's recreation programs and protocols and requirements. Tomorrow night, council can expect that we are going to hear quite a bit of public comment regarding actually some school-based issues, but they're going to be bringing them to our board tomorrow night as well for that conversation amongst ourselves and to apprise us of how some people are feeling. More than anything, I really just wanted to let board members know that, you know, I'll need to have conversations with you coming up soon about where you are with some amendments to some regulations. Most of the board, as well as the community, is looking at making some of our regulations a little bit more appropriate, perhaps. Whether it's the hockey community that's talking about dropping masks while they're on ice playing, whether it's parents and advocating on both sides of the masks in schools, or if it's other things, for example, the efficacy of the masking that we're seeing in restaurants and other public settings. These conversations are going to be coming up at the Board of Health in the next month. So I definitely want to touch base with each one of you to get your input. But my sense for that right now is we don't need to do that this week. We're going to see some new numbers from this week and see where our trends are going in order for us to have a more educated conversation about things that we might want to do. Upcoming, I have a chamber board meeting tomorrow morning. And then on Thursday, CAST membership, which was supposed to be convening in person in Steamboat, will be convening by Zoom, and that's this Thursday morning. That's my upcoming. So those are my board reports for you. And I only had one real council update that I need to get to, which is what Rachel brought up earlier. And it has to do with the kids first and childcare. And I guess I know that we have some work going on internally, but as Rachel suggested, there might be opportunity for a ballot question coming up, and that's something that we'll need to get organized and have those conversations with our partners. But while it may only be the end of January here, you know, November comes quickly. So these are kind of conversations that we do need to be having and bringing them forward and talking to our partners and stakeholders about. So I just wanted to reinforce that Rachel did bring that up, and that's going to be something that we're going to need to get to as a topic. So that's the only update I wanted to kind of bring forward, is that we do need to have that conversation at some point. Rachel has a hand up for more input. Rachel.
Yeah, no, actually, Toya, I was just thinking of a date I should throw out for the group in case anybody else wanted to attend. But, you know, coming out of the Club 20 meeting, we'll continue with our policy meetings in February in Grand Junction. But in March, we're having our, we have major conference twice a year and board of directors meeting. And as I've mentioned before, Club 20 is really trying to focus in a little more so that we're not, you know, a mile wide and an inch deep, and really, you know, plow a little more deeply. So this conference is going to be on Thursday, the 24th of March, and the 25th, about half day or so on the 25th, all day on the 24th. And it's focusing on wildfire and watersheds. And Club 20 is making its major focus and still paying attention to the other issues, so, you know, certainly working on them, but has picked, you know, agriculture, water, and public lands as being the pivotal issues to focus in on at this time. And so this is going to be a pretty major water and watershed and fire danger conference. And we're having it in March, so it's, you know, a little preparatory before the fire season really kicks in again. I'll be attending, but if anyone else wants to attend, I just wanted to make that opportunity known and, you know, put it out to, you know, potential staff members who may be interested. But I know they're really pulling in some top caliber speakers. We'll be able to get the updates on, you know, what the water levels are looking like and where it's all going on the Colorado River from there. Thank you.
Where's that held, Rachel?
That will be in Grand Junction. I'm not sure if it's Mesa University or if it's their convention center, but that the location to be determined. It will be in Grand Junction.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other board reports, council updates? Ward, let's go to you.
Just a couple of things on the RAFTA meeting. I had to bail early on that to go to another meeting, but we did review some of the progress on the Glenwood Springs maintenance facility, and a couple of things about wildfire mitigation around the buildings and reclaiming and filtering and reclaiming some of the water used to wash the buses. I think that was there's a multi-phase improvements going on with the maintenance facilities for RAFTA, and then I had to jump off to meet with mental health people.
Thank you. That'll bring us, yeah, Rachel.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sorry, I was thinking I'd bring this up during council comments tomorrow and try to get an email out to you guys all first or something, but since we have council updates as well as board, let me go ahead and put it out there. And I'm sure we all have just been astounded by the devastation that happened in Boulder County, in Louisville and Superior with that urban wildfire of that magnitude. And I was wondering if we would, as a group, consider sending some relief dollars from the city of Aspen, maybe nothing too much, but nothing too little from our contingency. And this is my logic. And again, we don't need to answer tonight. Just everyone think about it a little for tomorrow. But a few decades ago or so, the town of Granby had a madman who built a tank in his garage and then went and plowed down into City Hall and half of the street and knocked things over. And Granby was a really pretty small, low-budget town in the northwest corner. And almost all communities chipped in and sent $500 or $1,000 or something to replant their street trees and to do something for them. And I'll be the first to acknowledge it really is just a gesture, a token from one town, one community to another that has experienced losses on this level. And I know we have issues all the time where there's loss and tragedy, but this seems really very unique to me based on the magnitude. And I would just, I certainly would consider making a contribution from Aspen, $3,000 or something like that to you know, and search out the best, most appropriate fund to help that community rebuild or to help families who've lost literally everything. So I'll just leave it at that. And again, email me if you want with any thoughts or concerns. But, you know, sometimes something like that really humanizes a place like Aspen where people don't think that real people live. So I just think we have the capacity to do something. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Skippy.
Hey, Rachel, I really appreciate that suggestion. I feel like I'm going to do you to me to you right now. I really appreciate the suggestion, and I think that the intention is correct, and I like the idea. What I would want to know more, whether it's from you or staff, is just sort of, you know, how do we think about that going forward, and what are our boundaries around that? Because, I don't know, like you said to me, I think once we're talking about the dogs, right? If you do everything, then you do nothing. And also our ability to do stuff is not infinite. And so, you know, how do we think about moving forward as these kind of things happen more and more often? Who does and doesn't get support? Is it in the city, or is it in the state, or is it national? You know, I can get concerned of, do we only give to communities that think like us or politically are like us, or is it a human thing? So I would just want kind of more of your thoughts around that. Not now, but I'd like to think about that and the implications going forward in order to support it.
That makes sense, Skippy, and we'll talk about it again tomorrow.
Well, thank you.
All right. Speaking of tomorrow, we are back at 5 p.m. We have a regularly scheduled meeting. Quite a light agenda tomorrow on the actual meeting, but like I said, I do expect some public comment to start off our meeting tomorrow. I see Diane clicking back a camera back on. Diane, do you have any last items?
Just that I think it's now going to be 4 hours because you said it would be short.
You're right, and I hate you for saying it. I don't really hate you. Ward, put your hats down.
All right. Well,
but I appreciate that, Diane. I will watch what I say from now on.
We need one, but I'll second.
Okay.
And I said it would as a short agenda, not a short meeting. But you're right.
That's true. But say the other
semantics.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Cheers,
See you
y'all.
later.
Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Ciao, y'all.
Ciao.
There it is. Ciao, y'all.